Meghan Markle is back in the headlines again. But this time, it's not about a royal rift, a bombshell interview, or a new title to add to her brand. It's about a canceled Netflix cooking show and a podcast meltdown that turned into one of the most criticized PR stunts of the year. From trademark flops to fake tears, dried flower petals to toddler emails, Meghan's attempt to relaunch herself as a lifestyle icon has hit turbulence. And now, the internet's calling her out harder than ever. This is the story of how Meghan Markle tried to pivot and instead triggered one of the biggest public image flops in recent memory. Let's start with the main dish, her canceled Netflix show. Titled At Home with Meghan, the show was pitched as a down-to-earth lifestyle series, showcasing her in the kitchen, making homemade jams, preserves, and crudité boards for the kids. The branding? Wholesome, earthy, soft lighting, floral accents. Think Martha Stewart, but with royal gossip sprinkled on top. But here's the problem. Sources at Netflix revealed the show lacked substance. Early footage reportedly showed Meghan struggling to zest a lemon. One crew member said, "It felt like watching someone play house. She didn't seem like she'd ever used half the utensils she was holding." Behind the scenes, producers allegedly clashed with her team over direction, editing control, and even basic recipe segments. After delays, reshoots, and months of silence, Netflix quietly pulled the plug. And that's when Meghan went off. Right after news of the canceled show started surfacing, Meghan launched her podcast appearance with Jamie Kern Lima, a billionaire beauty CEO, author, and self-made Oprah wannabe. The podcast was pitched as raw, emotional, real, no makeup, no script, just Meghan, talking, crying, rebuilding, except no one believed a word of it. She claimed she was crying, but there wasn't a single tear. She said she was makeup-free, yet had a perfect blowout, dewy skin, flawless camera angles, and lighting that screamed studio, not spontaneous. One viral post said, "Even her tears have a PR team." Another joked, "If this is what Meghan looks like with no makeup, then I've been lied to my entire life." Critics called the episode a brand launch disguised as a breakdown. And honestly, that's exactly how it felt. If Meghan Markle's goal was to open up, then she certainly chose the most strategic time. Right after Netflix scrapped her lifestyle series, and while headlines were already turning against her. But what made people really raise their eyebrows wasn't the timing. It was how fast the rawness of the interview turned into a rollout. Because within minutes of the emotional podcast episode dropping, everything started to shift. From confession to campaign. Throughout the conversation with Jamie Kern Lima, Meghan toggled between talking about her mental health and talking about her brand launch. One moment she was speaking about feeling misunderstood and burned out, and the next, she was promoting homemade jams, signature sauces, and her upcoming eco-chic lifestyle platform that would sell everything from linen napkins to customized dog bowls. Even her emotional anecdotes were strategically paired with personal branding moments. She recounted feeling overwhelmed, just trying to write an Instagram caption. She paused to talk about the beauty of dried flower petals. She framed motherhood as a brand story, mentioning she writes emails to her toddlers, a move meant to sound touching, but came across as painfully calculated. It wasn't long before the entire interview felt like a 40-minute soft launch. Every tearful pause seemed perfectly timed for a pull quote. Every casual product reference felt curated. Every relatable moment was suspiciously polished. Critics noticed instantly. One journalist wrote, "This wasn't a confession. It was a campaign strategy with a few sobs sprinkled in for optics." And it's hard to disagree, because after the interview, press packages were sent to influencers, complete with branded tea, jams, and handwritten cards. From Meghan, the packaging, flawless. The products, sparse, limited quantity, out of stock before most people even heard about them. It gave the impression that the launch was more important than the actual offering. Even on social media, Meghan's team flooded the internet with posts featuring her podcast clips alongside product imagery, turning a conversation about vulnerability into a commercial funnel. Fans who genuinely wanted to support her were confused. What were they endorsing? Her story or her shop? Some who tried to order the products complained they never received them. Others said the online store felt unfinished, like it was built for press, not customers. And the biggest irony? The interview began with Meghan saying she wasn't sure if she was ready to share anything with the world again. But by the end, it was clear. She wasn't just ready. She had planned it, packaged it, trademarked it, from podcast to product in under an hour. This wasn't storytelling. It was a marketing funnel disguised as a breakdown. And the public could feel it. Because when someone cries and sells you jam in the same breath, you don't feel moved. You feel sold to. Social media exploded. Some accused Meghan of faking vulnerability for clicks. Others said she was trying to be a royal version of Gwyneth Paltrow, but forgot the actual wellness part. One user wrote, "This isn't Meghan being herself. This is Meghan playing the real Meghan on Netflix." Another called the entire podcast a carefully lit monologue from someone who's never actually waited in line at Trader Joe's. And let's not forget the most infamous moment. Meghan claiming she writes emails to her toddlers every night. Emails to toddlers. She pitched it as a loving time capsule. The internet saw it as a PR stunt disguised as parenting. What started with a jar of jam quickly spiraled into something much stranger. Shortly after Meghan's podcast appearance, investigative fans and media outlets began digging into newly filed trademarks under her company's name. What they found wasn't just a lifestyle brand, it was a full-on merchandise empire in the making. And it didn't stop at preserves. In the filings, there were plans for yoga mats. Then came mentions of herbal teas, cookbooks, kitchen linens, meditation cushions, and even stationery. Some were quaint. Others felt like a parody of wellness culture. But the most confusing, pet food dishes and custom water bowls for dogs, allegedly stamped with lifestyle affirmations, it was all under the umbrella of Meghan's brand, which claimed to celebrate home, connection, and mindful living. But what exactly did dog bowls have to do with emotional vulnerability or storytelling? Critics and commentators began to ask the same question. Was this a carefully crafted identity project? Or was it a scrambled attempt to monetize whatever aesthetic was left over from her time in the royal spotlight? The brand felt like a mood board on overdrive. Part goop, part anthropology, and part royal souvenir shop. Dried flower petals paired with jam jars, nestled next to linen napkins and rose-infused pantry labels. There was no clear direction. No core product, just stuff. Beautiful stuff, yes, but stuff nonetheless. And when people looked deeper, they noticed an even stranger pattern. Many of the items being trademarked or soft-launched bore phrases like Her Royal Highness, despite Meghan no longer being allowed to use that title. That's when things turned from confusing to controversial. Was she holding on to the royal branding even as she told the world she didn't want it? Was she trying to build a brand off of a title she no longer legally held? Online backlash hit hard. Even longtime fans began to feel like they were being sold a fantasy, one dressed in organic packaging and flower emojis, but still a fantasy. The branding wasn't elegant, it was excessive. And the tone, which once claimed to be rooted in empowerment and authenticity, had shifted into something far more chaotic, something far more commercial. In the end, the jam may have been real, but the identity behind it, that felt increasingly hard to believe. Let's zoom out. Meghan and Harry walked away from the royal family, saying they didn't want attention, fame, or press. Then they signed multi-million-dollar deals with Spotify, Netflix, and Penguin Random House. They launched podcasts, documentaries, cookbooks, children's books, coaching platforms. But one by one, the deals collapsed. Spotify dropped them, Netflix quietly scrapped content. And now, even her product lines are drawing complaints from fans who say they never got their orders and never got refunds. People started calling the entire empire a brand built on vibes and empty inventory. The biggest question after Meghan's emotional podcast episode dropped wasn't about the story she told. It was about the way she told it. Was this a real, raw breakdown? Or was it something else entirely? Was it a carefully designed brand reboot dressed up to look like vulnerability? Because everything about the interview felt just a little too polished, too symmetrical, too on-brand to be accidental. The podcast wasn't with a journalist or an independent platform. It was hosted by Jamie Kern Lima, a personal friend of Meghan's and someone whose brand philosophy aligns perfectly with her own. The conversation was framed as spontaneous and unfiltered, but Meghan arrived with clear talking points and product references woven naturally, or maybe unnaturally, into the discussion. Even her so-called no-makeup appearance felt curated. She wore a flawless blowout, soft studio lighting, dewy skin, and a well-fitted neutral wardrobe that just happened to align with the branding colors of her lifestyle line. She claimed to be holding back tears, yet no one ever saw one fall. She looked calm, composed, and camera-ready, not devastated. And while the conversation revolved around themes of self-worth, motherhood, and healing, almost every segment circled back to a product, a flavor, a launch, a lifestyle detail. It wasn't just a story about struggle, it was a sales funnel. You could almost hear the Shopify page loading in the background. By the end of the episode, what was supposed to be a candid heart-to-heart began to feel more like a commercial. A soft launch wrapped in silk words and teary pauses. Every personal anecdote felt rehearsed. Every line carried the cadence of a quote meant for headlines. It didn't feel like Meghan Markle was opening her heart. It felt like she was opening a brand deck. And for a public already exhausted by carefully packaged celebrity sincerity, it was just another example of emotional marketing disguised as meaning. Another recurring theme? Meghan's obsession with titles, even in private gift baskets. To friends, she signs cards Her Royal Highness. Even after walking away from the monarchy, even after the Queen stripped those honors, critics called it tone-deaf, desperate, and delusional. One British commentator said, "At some point, the fantasy ends. She's not a duchess anymore. She's an influencer with a castle in her bio." And honestly, it's starting to show. According to reports from Page Six and industry insiders, even major lifestyle brands, like Goop and Honest, are distancing themselves. Why? Because Meghan's brand is too polarizing. One insider put it bluntly, you can't sell yoga mats and princess tears in the same breath. Consumers see through that now. Even her Times 100 appearance, once considered a power move, was seen as a paid-for PR placement, not real recognition. The verdict was loud. We've had enough of the royal victim brand. This isn't a hate piece. It's not a takedown. It's a look at what happens when a public figure confuses image with identity. Meghan Markle has every right to tell her story, but when every story ends with product links, press quotes, and self-congratulations, the public eventually tunes out. From fake breakdowns to failed launches, from glossy podcasts to jam jars and flower petals, the real story here isn't about royalty. It's about what happens when branding becomes more important than being real. And right now, no one's buying it. This is Behind the Light Stick. Subscribe for more breakdowns of celebrity PR, media manipulation, and the truth behind the performance. Because sometimes the real disaster isn't what got canceled. It's what they tried to sell in its place.